All right, today we are pulling back the curtain on something you probably never think about, but it's working to protect you every single day. We're talking about the incredibly detailed step-by-step system that makes sure the medicine you take is actually safe. Let's dive in. So just think about it for a second. You open your medicine cabinet, you take a pill, you just trust that it's going to work and that it's not going to hurt you. But why? Where does that trust come from? Well, it's not just blind faith. It's built on a massive, really sophisticated system that operates completely behind the scenes.
And this quote right here, this is the whole point. This is the guiding principle, the North Star for everything we're about to talk about. Every single rule, every check, every procedure, it all comes back to this one simple idea. Do not put patients at risk. It's all about safety, quality, and making sure the medicine does its job.
So where does it all begin? Well, it starts at the very top with a huge overarching strategy. Think of it as the master plan for quality, and it's called the Pharmaceutical Quality System, or PQS for short.
Now, I know that sounds a little formal, right? The sum total of the organized arrangements. So what does that actually mean? Let's use an analogy. Imagine you're building a massive skyscraper. The PQS isn't just the blueprint for one floor. No, it's the entire philosophy of the architectural firm, their complete system for guaranteeing that the building is safe and structurally sound from the initial design all the way to the grand opening. So this master plan has to cover every possible angle. And the key thing here is that it's proactive, not reactive. You're not waiting for something to go wrong. You design quality into the product from day one. You define every single step. You vet every supplier. You train every person. And you are constantly monitoring everything. If something does go wrong, a deviation, you don't just fix it, you dig deep to find the root cause so it never ever happens again. It's a system that's always learning.
Okay, so if the PQS is the high-level master plan, how does it actually translate to the factory floor? How do you put it into practice? Well, that's where the next layer comes in. Good manufacturing practice, or GMP.
The magic word here is consistently. GMP is all about making sure that every batch of medicine is an identical copy of the last one. Going back to our skyscraper, if the PQS is the architect's grand vision, GMP is the super detailed construction blueprint and the strict building code. It's the set of rules every single worker has to follow, to the letter, every single day, no exceptions.
And you can really see the step-by-step logic here. Look at the emphasis on clarity and proof. First, define the process. Then, make sure you have the right people, the right space, the right equipment. Step 3 is huge. Write instructions that are so clear they cannot be misunderstood. And then, step 4, you document everything. This creates an ironclad paper trail, a record that proves every step was followed exactly as planned.
So we have the master plan, the PQS. We have the building code, GMP. But who's actually checking the quality of the materials? Who's making sure the work is being done right as it happens? You need an inspector, right? And that brings us to our third layer, quality control.
Quality control, or QC, is the hands-on scientific part of the process. This is the team in the lab. In our building analogy, QC is the independent inspector who shows up on site. They're taking samples of the concrete mix, they're testing the strength of the steel beams, they're making sure everything being used is up to spec. QC provides the hard data, the objective proof that the process is actually working and the product is what it's supposed to be.
So let's just quickly put it all together. It's a 3-layer defense system. You've got the PQS, which is the overall strategy, the master plan. Underneath that, you have GMP, the specific rules for production, the blueprint. And checking everything along the way is QC, the inspection. Each part is essential, and they all work together to create this incredibly robust system.
Okay, so the product has been made according to the blueprint, and it's passed all the inspections. It's ready for the public now, right? We're done? Well, not quite. There is one more absolutely critical phase.
Because even with all these amazing systems, all these procedures, all these automated checks, the final, ultimate decision doesn't rest with a computer or a machine. It rests with a person.
And that person has a special title, the Qualified Person, or QP. This is the final gatekeeper. The QP's job is to review everything for a batch, all the manufacturing records, all the QC test results, any deviation reports, and then personally sign their name to it, certifying that it meets all the requirements. In our building analogy, this is the official who issues the final certificate of occupancy, legally declaring the skyscraper is safe for people to enter. It's a huge responsibility.
But here's the thing that makes this system so powerful. Even after the QP signs off and the medicine is on the pharmacy shelf, the job still isn't done. A core part of that high-level PQS is the idea of continual improvement. The system is designed to constantly learn and get better.
And this is how it learns. At least once a year, they do what's called a product quality review. Think of it like a deep dive annual physical for the medicine. They look at all the raw materials they've used, they analyze test results to see if there are any subtle trends, they review every single complaint or deviation, and they ask the big question: is there anything we can do better? It ensures the quality never, ever gets stagnant.
So that's really the big picture. It's this hidden, step-by-step architecture of plans, rules, and checks, all working together in the background. From that high-level master plan, down to the detailed manufacturing blueprint, to the constant on-the-ground inspections, it's a chain of accountability designed for one purpose, and one purpose only: to protect you. So the next time you open that medicine bottle, maybe you'll see it a little differently. Does knowing about this whole unseen world, this immense system of plans, practices, and human checks standing behind that one simple pill, change how you think about it? It's definitely something to consider.
Think about the last time you took a pill. Maybe for a headache, maybe an allergy. It's this tiny, perfect little thing, right? But have you ever wondered how it gets to you? It's not just about machines and chemicals. Today, we're going to pull back the curtain on the most critical ingredient of all: the people. Which brings up a huge question, right? It's one thing to make a life-saving drug once, but how do you guarantee that millions of doses are all perfectly identical, perfectly safe, and perfectly effective every single time? I mean, when you're talking about medicine, the stakes are about as high as they get.
Well, the answer is, surprisingly, human. Before a single chemical gets mixed, before any fancy machine is even turned on, it all begins with an incredibly detailed plan. A step-by-step guide designed entirely for the people who will run the whole show.
So here's how we're going to break it down. We'll start with the most basic idea, the human foundation. Then we'll check out the organizational blueprint. We'll meet the 3 key leaders who hold it all together, dig into the intense training they all go through, and wrap up with the daily hygiene rules they live by. Let's jump in. All right, so where does it all begin? Not with a complicated formula or a piece of machinery, but with a simple core principle. This is what we call the human foundation, and believe me, it supports absolutely everything else. And here it is, straight from the official EU rulebook: the correct manufacture of medicinal products relies upon people. Now, this isn't some feel-good corporate slogan they hang on a wall. It is a fundamental legal and ethical rule. It means no matter how amazing the tech gets, the ultimate responsibility always, always comes down to people.
Okay, so if people are the foundation, how do you build on top of that? Well, you need a blueprint. A super detailed organizational plan that makes sure everyone and everything works together flawlessly. Because when you're making medicine, there is zero room for error. And that blueprint, it starts right at the very top. Senior management has the ultimate responsibility here. This is something they absolutely cannot delegate. They have to provide all the resources, define every single role with crystal clarity, and constantly check in on the system to prove that it's actually working. Quality isn't just a goal. For them, it's a non-negotiable duty.
And this is where you really see the obsession with detail. The regulations are so specific. There has to be an org chart. Every key person must have a written job description. So why all the paperwork? Because in this world, any confusion can be genuinely dangerous. The entire system is engineered to get rid of any gaps or overlaps where a critical safety step could get missed.
So we've got our blueprint, but who are the pillars holding this whole structure up day in and day out? Well, it really comes down to 3 key leaders, and each one has a very specific, very critical job. Now, before we even get into who they are, this is probably the single most important rule of the whole system. The person in charge of production, the person making the drug, and the person in charge of quality control, the one checking it, they must be independent. They can't report to each other. It's a brilliant, built-in system of checks and balances, designed so no one ever feels pressured to cut a corner. And this just lays it out perfectly. Think of it as the maker versus the checker. The head of production, our maker, is all about making sure the drug is produced exactly according to the plan. But the head of quality control, the checker, has the totally independent power to say yes or no to raw materials, packaging, even the finished product. You'll notice they both have to train their teams, but their core jobs are kept separate on purpose. And then you've got the third pillar, the final gatekeeper. This is the qualified person, or QP. This is a role required by law, and the weight of responsibility is just immense. This one person personally signs off on every single batch, certifying that it meets every single legal and quality standard. Their name is literally on the line. The job is so important that they have to be available to the company all the time, and their duties can only ever be handed off to another certified QP. Okay, so we have the structure, and we have the leaders, but a blueprint is just paper without the know-how to make it real. So how does this whole system actually come to life? Well, through intense A to Z training that basically activates every single person involved. So, who exactly gets trained on all these strict rules? The scientists? The lab techs? Yep, of course. But it goes way, way further than that. The short answer is absolutely everyone whose job could possibly affect the final product. That means the maintenance folks, the people working in the warehouse, even the cleaning staff. In this kind of environment, there's no such thing as a small job. And the training follows this really clear step-by-step life cycle. Every new person starts with foundational training on the core principles. Then they get specific training for their exact role. If their job takes them into a high-risk area, like a sterile cleanroom, they get even more specialized training. And here's the thing, it never stops. Their skills and knowledge are constantly being assessed and refreshed. And get this, the system is so airtight that even a visitor or a contractor can't just wander in. If they absolutely have to go into a production area, they get a briefing on all the rules beforehand and are supervised the entire time they're in there. There are no exceptions, none. So, the team is structured, they're led, and they're always being trained. But how is that incredible standard of quality kept up minute by minute right there on the factory floor? It all comes down to a set of daily hygiene rules that are completely non-negotiable. And these rules are absolute, starting with the really obvious stuff. No food, no drinks, no chewing gum anywhere near production. Why? Because even the tiniest crumb is a totally unacceptable risk for contamination. Same deal with smoking. It's not just that you can't smoke in there, you can't even store any smoking materials in these controlled areas. It's all about eliminating any possible contamination in the air. Personal health is a massive factor too. If someone has an infectious disease or even something as simple as a cut on their hand, they are not allowed in the manufacturing areas. It's all about preventing any kind of biological contamination. And to protect the product from the people, everyone who walks in has to wear specific protective clothing. This creates a solid, non-negotiable barrier between the person and the medicine they're making. And it all comes back to the most fundamental rule of all, constant, thorough hand washing. It's that final, simple step that reinforces this whole culture of absolute cleanliness and control every single day. Which, brings us right back to where we started. All of these steps, the org chart, the leaders, the training, the strict daily rules, they all exist to support this one powerful idea. The entire system is built to empower people to do their jobs perfectly every single time. So yeah, this system is incredibly complex, but its whole purpose is beautifully simple. It's all there to protect you. So the next time you hold a simple pill in your hand, maybe you'll see it a little differently. Not just as a product, but as the final step of a really long journey, made possible by a huge, dedicated team of people.
Have you ever wondered what's really going on inside one of those buildings where medicine is made? It's kind of a hidden world, and it's governed by an incredibly strict set of rules. So today, we're going to get a special inside look. We'll be using the European Union's official safety blueprint, the Good Manufacturing Practice Guidelines, to see exactly how every single medicine is protected step by step.
This whole massive blueprint really boils down to one central question. How do you build a fortress against contamination? Because that's exactly what a pharmaceutical facility is designed to be, a fortress. Every wall, every pipe, every procedure is a carefully planned defense mechanism to protect the medicine inside.
So a fortress this complex has to be built on a solid foundation, right? And it is. The entire thing is built on one core principle. You can think of it as the mission statement that governs everything, from the architectural plans right down to the daily cleaning schedule.
What's so important here are those two specific goals: minimize human error and prevent contamination. That's it. Every single rule we're about to walk through is designed to serve one of those two critical objectives. It's all about making the system as foolproof and as clean as humanly possible.
Okay, so let's start our virtual tour. And just like with any good fortress, the defenses don't start at the front door. They start on the outside, with the very ground the facility is built on.
This first layer of defense basically treats the entire building like a sealed bubble. A little crack in an exterior wall, that's not a maintenance issue. In this world, that's a security breach. The location, the cleaning, the pest control, it's all designed to completely isolate the facility from the outside world. And unauthorized people, absolutely not allowed.
And that level of control extends to things you can't even see, like the air itself. Every element, the lighting, the temperature, the humidity, the ventilation, is controlled with incredible precision. A temperature that's off by just a little bit could ruin an entire batch of ingredients. Too much humidity could grind production to a halt. The goal here is a perfectly stable internal environment where absolutely nothing is left to chance.
All right, now we're stepping inside, into the heart of the facility, the production core. This is where the medicine is actually being made. And, as you can imagine, this is where the risk of contamination and the defenses against it are at their absolute highest.
In here, the primary enemy, the main villain of the story, has a name: cross-contamination. This is public enemy number one. It's the risk of a microscopic particle of one medicine getting into another, which, could have devastating consequences for a patient. The entire design of this area is a masterclass in making sure that never, ever happens.
So, how is this inner sanctum defended? Well, for starters, the layout is designed like a one-way street for production. This prevents mix-ups and backtracking. But the real genius is in the surfaces themselves. Every single wall, floor, and pipe is engineered to be perfectly smooth and seamless. This leaves absolutely no crevices, no cracks, no place for a contaminant to hide. It's an environment that's actively hostile to dirt.
But what about really high-risk materials, things like certain powerful antibiotics? Well, for those, the risk is so great that even these extreme measures aren't considered enough. The only solution is the ultimate one: a completely separate, totally dedicated building. It's literally a fortress within the fortress, guaranteeing zero possibility of cross-contamination with any other product.
Now, the production core is amazing, but it can't operate alone. It relies on these critical support areas. Think of them as essential wings of the facility, and each one has its own set of strict rules, all designed to protect that central core.
First up, storage. Now I want you to erase any image you might have of a dusty, old warehouse. That is not what this is. This is a highly controlled environment designed to protect every single material from the moment it arrives to the moment it leaves as part of a finished product.
This whole controlled environment is built around the idea of quarantine. Every single material that arrives is treated as guilty until proven innocent. It's immediately isolated, locked down, and sampled. Nothing gets cleared to enter the production area until the quality control labs give the official final green light.
And speaking of that green light, that brings us to our second support wing, the quality control labs. This is the scientific command center of the entire facility. And to make absolutely sure its results are completely unbiased, it is always physically separate from the production areas.
The labs are designed with that same obsessive attention to detail we saw in production. The layout is all about preventing mix-ups, and super sensitive instruments are shielded in their own rooms to prevent any interference. Every rule here serves one purpose: guaranteeing that every single test result is accurate and trustworthy. Okay, our final support wing covers what are called ancillary areas. Now, this might sound a little boring, but stick with me. You'd think a break room is just a break room, or a workshop is just a workshop, right? Well, not in this blueprint.
The logic here is just total, uncompromising isolation. Restrooms and toilets can never, ever open directly into production or storage areas. Even the maintenance workshop has to be kept separate. And why? Because anything that isn't directly part of making the medicine must be physically walled off from the clean core. It's all about preventing any possible source of contamination.
So we've designed the building from the ground up. We've thought about every room, every surface. But what about the tools and machines we put inside it? Well, as you've probably guessed by now, the equipment is governed by the exact same strict principles.
This right here is the golden rule for any piece of equipment. Let's put it in simple terms. Any part of a machine that physically touches the medicine has to be completely inert. It can't react with the product, it can't add anything to it, and it can't absorb anything from it. The machine's job is to make the medicine, not to become part of it. These rules follow a machine through its entire life. It starts with its design. It has to be easy to clean. Then it moves to its strict calibration schedule to make sure it's always accurate. And if a machine breaks or becomes defective, it's immediately taken out of service or clearly labeled. In this system, there is zero room for error from faulty equipment.
Okay, we've just toured the entire facility, from the foundation all the way to the individual machines inside. Let's just take one final step back and see how all these thousands and thousands of details actually come together.
And this is the ultimate takeaway. Every single rule, from the smoothness of a wall to the specific label on a tiny pipe, is a deliberate, calculated step. All of these details work together in harmony for one profoundly important reason: to ensure that the medicine we and our families rely on is safe and effective, every single time. I mean, it's an incredibly detailed, incredibly demanding blueprint, which leaves us with a final thought to chew on. In a system this complex, where every single step is designed for safety, what is the real cost of taking just one single shortcut?
Have you ever wondered what really guarantees the medicine you take is safe? Well, today, we're pulling back the curtain on something that might not sound glamorous, but is absolutely critical: paperwork. We're going to walk through the incredibly detailed world of pharmaceutical documentation step by step to see how this system protects every single one of us. So let's just start with this question right here. A company makes millions, maybe even billions of pills in a single batch. How on earth can they be sure that the very last pill to come off the line is exactly as safe and effective as the very first one? The scale of that is just mind-boggling, right? But there is an answer. And that answer is a global standard called Good Manufacturing Practice, or GMP for short. You can think of it as the ultimate rulebook for making medicine. It's not just a friendly suggestion, it's a whole system designed to make sure every product is made and controlled to the absolute highest quality standards every single time. But here's the kicker. The real heart of GMP isn't some super advanced robot or a secret chemical formula. It's documentation, paperwork. That is the absolute backbone of this entire system. Without it, nothing works. It's what's used to control, monitor, and, most importantly, record every single thing that happens. So, here's how we're going to break this down. First, we'll meet the two main families of documents. Then, we'll look at how the master plan, the blueprint, gets created. After that, we'll see how these rules actually play out on the factory floor. And finally, we'll talk about the surprisingly long life these documents have. Okay, first things first. Every single document in this entire system can be sorted into one of two categories. And the easiest way to think about them is like this. You've got a recipe book and you've got a kitchen diary. One tells you exactly what to do, and the other proves that you actually did it. Simple as that. And this chart lays it out perfectly. On the left, you have instructions. These are your directions, your requirements, your recipe. This is all about what you're supposed to do. And on the right, you have records and reports. This is the evidence, the history, the diary. This is the proof of what was actually done, who did it, and when. So what do these recipes look like in the real world? Well, you've got specifications, which basically define how pure your ingredients need to be. You've got the manufacturing formula, which is literally the list of ingredients and how much of each to use. And then you have the really detailed playbooks, like processing instructions and SOPs, or standard operating procedures. These tell you how to do everything, step by step, from making the drug to cleaning the machines. Now for the diary side. The star of the show here is the batch record. This document tells the entire life story of one batch of medicine from start to finish. Then you have things like certificates of analysis, which prove it passed all its tests, and logbooks that track every time a piece of equipment was used or cleaned. All these pieces of evidence come together to build that complete, unbreakable history. Okay, so we know what the documents are, but how do those instructions, those all-important recipes, get made in the first place? You can't just type one up and call it a day. The process for creating them is intensely controlled to make sure there is zero chance of an error. It follows this really strict life cycle. First, it's designed to be super clear and easy to follow. Then it gets reviewed by a team of experts. After that, someone in authority has to officially approve it, sign it, and date it. Only then are official copies made and carefully handed out. And even then, it's not done. They are constantly being reviewed to make sure they're never out of date. And get this, the language itself is regulated. The rules say instructions must be written in an imperative mandatory style. That means they use commands. Weigh 10 grams, set temperature to 50 degrees, record result. There is no room for interpretation. No, you should probably, no guesswork. It's all about clear, direct commands. All right, we've got our approved recipes. Now for the fun part. Let's head out onto the factory floor and see how people actually use them. We're shifting gears now from creating the instructions to the real-world rules for filling out the records, for writing in that diary. And the number one most important rule is this. You write it down the second you do it, not before, and definitely not after. You can't wait until the end of your shift and try to remember what you did. You can't fill it out ahead of time. It has to be done in real time, right as the action happens. That's what creates a reliable, moment-by-moment account of what happened. And there are some golden rules for how you make those entries. Everything must be clear and readable. It has to be written in permanent ink. That's right, no pencils. Every entry has to be traceable, which means you initial it so everyone knows who wrote it. And finally, it has to be complete. You can't leave any blank spaces where someone might add something later. So what happens if you make a mistake? I mean, we're all human. Well, you can't just scribble it out or use correction fluid. There's a very specific 3-step process. 1, cross out the mistake with a single line, so you can still read what was underneath. 2, write the correct information right next to it. And 3, sign or initial it and add the date. This way, every change is totally transparent and accounted for. Okay, on to our final section. The medicine is made, it's in the box, it's shipped out the door. You'd think the story ends there, right? Wrong. The journey for its paperwork is actually far from over. These documents have a long, long legacy. So why keep all this paper around for years? It all comes down to patient safety. This paper trail means that if a problem is ever discovered with a medicine, even years down the road, investigators can pull that exact batch record. They can see exactly what happened, what materials were used, and who did what. It's the key to figuring out what went wrong and protecting other patients. And we aren't talking about a few months. For most medicines, the complete documentation for a batch has to be kept for a minimum of 5 years after the product has been officially released for sale. 5 years. Here's a quick breakdown. For a normal medicine you'd buy at the pharmacy, it's 1 year past the expiration date or 5 years after it was released, whichever is longer. And for drugs that are still in clinical trials, the records have to be kept for at least 5 years after the entire study is over. So this information sticks around for a very long time. So if you take one thing away from all of this, let it be this. Every single pill, every single dose of medicine has a detailed, verifiable paper trail behind it. It's proof that it was made exactly the way it was supposed to be. It's what guarantees that the millionth pill really is just as safe as the very first. And that brings us to one final, really interesting question for the future. We've been talking about paperwork, but so much of this is moving into the digital world. The principles are all the same, but the technology is changing. So how do we build digital systems that can protect these absolutely critical records and keep them readable and secure, not just for 5 years, but for decades to come? That is the next big challenge in keeping us all safe.